All right, and we're live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our little Hall of Fame project here. I'm Random Acoustic Thoughts. I've got two special guests. I got Scrapbook Boxing and the Boxing Librarian. Scrap and BL, what's up, guys?
I'm doing well, man. BL, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, Scrapbook. Thank you. Hope you two guys are well. It's been too long since we've done a hookup, so yeah, I've really been looking forward to it since we discussed it last week. So yeah, it's great to be here. Hope you guys are well.
Yeah, doing great. I'm back training. I hit the bag Saturday, so I'm doing fantastic. So, folks, what we're doing here is we're just doing our little YouTube Boxing Hall of Fame. The standards are high. The criteria don't exist, though. It's just the three of us. I think we're going to go to be a unanimous to get someone in, but we're just going to wing it. We're kind of winging this whole thing, going on just overall how we feel after whatever degree we have studied the sport's history. And we're going to just take turns nominating people. I'm assuming we'll go with some of the formative legends. We're going to just see what happens and just let it evolve. So consider episode 1. I don't even know how long we'll run this for, at least an hour and a half, and I imagine. So let's see how many guys we get to in our inaugural class. Scrap, would you like to go first, sir? Kick it off.
Sure. I nominate Benny Leonard, who was a lightweight champion from May 28, 1917. He would defeat Freddie Welch, and he would retire officially in 1925. This man was something else, and I can't see him not being in the Hall of Fame. He has accomplished so much, so I have to choose Benny Leonard as my first pick.
100% great pick. One of the top 2 lightweights of all time, probably by resume. I think BL, you have him as the top 2 lightweight, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I do. No, I have him number 1.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah. I think I had Gans edging him, but it was top 2. You know, it was hard. It's a tough one. Leonard, his resume is insane. Really is. Great nomination, Scrap. BL, do you want to elaborate on that, or would you like to take your first pick?
No, I'd just like to say it's a great start. You know, we're talking about one of the premier fighters in lightweight division history. A man who idolized Joe Gans, was awe-inspired by Joe Gans, and himself went on, like Gans, to become one of the greatest lightweight fighters ever. A real skillster in ring, you know, a real cerebral fighter, with a great knockout punch as well. And, you know, being lineal lightweight champion from 1918 to 1925 in that era with the level of competition around, the fact that in his very first defense, he fought a black fighter, and when questioned said that all fighters can have an opportunity because it's competition man on man, ignoring the color line. So everything about Benny Leonard, to me, is great, and he deserves, to me, his number 1 spot. I know that some other people put Gans first. I put Benny Leonard first, you know, followed by Gans, Ike Williams, and then Duran. But, you know, at the end of the day, yeah, it's a great pick. So yes, I vote yes to Benny Leonard.
Fantastic. Okay, you can go ahead, BL, with your first inductee.
BL, can I say one more thing on Leonard, please? One more thing, if you don't mind. One more thing on Leonard, if you don't mind.
Yes, certainly.
Benny Leonard is the only fighter who had a boxing exhibition in the White House, in the south wing of the White House. The president was Woodrow Wilson. You know who he had an exhibition against? It was a man by the name of Billy Grubb. Billy Grubb has a gymnasium on 116th Street. Ray Robinson's second gym from when he turned amateur was in Billy Grubb's gym. Billy Grubb was also had his time with Harry Greb and so on and so forth. I don't want to get too far off, but I just wanted to show that was the first fighter who ever fought. Well, he had an exhibition in the south wing of the White House, and Woodrow Wilson was the president at that time. So show you how special Benny Leonard was.
Fantastic.
Incredible.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Sorry, BL.
No, it's okay. That's a great factoid there, Scrap. Really, really top class. Fantastic story. Yeah, my first nominee, I'm going for my number one, Sam Langford. I don't think I need to speak too much on Sam Langford. He is my number one fighter of all time, and for good reason. Some people debate me on that issue, but ultimately I stand by his incredible numbers, his incredible resume, his incredible weight move. He's one of the greatest weight movers of all time for the fact that he fought more fights at the higher weights than he fought at the lower weights. He's one of the great pound-for-pound punchers of all time. He has, to me, the greatest resume of all time. And when you add all those factors together, to me, Langford is an automatic choice.
I'll drink to that. So will Langford. There he is, pounding down some Tooth Double Stout in Australia, probably 1912.
Nice.
Hanging out with the boys. Yeah,
That's a great
I
book.
wholeheartedly agree with that. Sam Langford. That's why I put him on the graphic. There he is. The night he should have been fighting Jack Johnson to challenge for the title. Johnson take from Tommy Burns. The fight was booked. Johnson withdrew, so he knocked out Iron Haig and became the British heavyweight champion instead. The last pre-Lonsdale British heavyweight champion.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Sam
indeed,
Langford. So I agree 100%, BL. He fought all the greats. No doubt about it.
Yeah, that's definitely a good call. So I think for my first, I'm gonna go ahead and put Barbados Joe Walcott in there. Great fighter of the late 1800s, early 1900s, welterweight champion. But more than that, he was the giant killer. He was one of the original giant killers who without a weight cut or training down, he was under 150 pounds, like 148 was like his optimal no cutting weight, and he was just a destructive force. He fought and beat some heavyweights. He was quite the guy. He had a wrestling background, tough as nails, extremely short, used it to his advantage. And a lot of the tricks that he had, people who fought him, including the great Sam Langford, they picked up a lot of stuff from him or from his brother Belfield, who trained with him. So he also spread the craft and was an example of, to the point where later generations, great weight traveling fighters would be compared to Walcott. Certainly for the first few decades afterwards, they were trying to be like him. Sam Langford himself was considered a larger version of Walcott, basically a triangle of muscle. So anyway, Barbados Joe Walcott, great fighter, immeasurably great, influential. When Jack Johnson was gearing up for the super fight with Jim Jeffries, when Jeffries was coming back, Walcott joined the camp, and they basically, one author said that he was once the greatest fighting machine the world ever saw, talking about his youth. So Walcott was a special fighter. He absolutely had to be in there, and now he's in. Scrapbook.
I agree 100%. I believe the Barbados Demon Joe Walcott should be in the Hall of Fame. He had so many accomplishments. He fought all the great fighters during his day. He was the first Black world welterweight champion. He became champion a second time after Dixie Kid when he took on the mysterious Billy Smith. So you have to give him credit. He fought his way up as heavy as heavyweight, pretty much. Knocked out Chewinski. So yes, you have to give him that credit, and I second that he should be in the Hall of Fame.
Fantastic. All right.
Yes, I will give a
sorry.
third vote to Barbados Joe Walcott. Like Random alluded to, and the good point Scrap made. He was one of the great early warriors, from challenging for lightweight title against George Kid Levine, who was actually a good puncher and a very good fighter. Yes, he had to sign the outrageous contracts. He had to drain himself, and he couldn't get the job done. But then to go on and terrorize the welterweight division as lineal champion in early 1900s, destroying Joe Chojinski, being behind on the cards against Langford, and then in second half of fight, turning the fight into an absolute attack camp, to the point where Langford had a few difficult rounds here or there, that Langford should have probably won, but Barbados Walcott made it a tougher fight over the second half once he got past, decided to barge past Langford's jab and his left hook that he kept tagging him with as he came in. So certainly a great fighter, a great puncher, and also a great fighter who fought fighters across multiple ways. And I think in the Hall of Fame, there are certain fighters that I don't think get credited enough for that. You know, like if you're a fighter at 135 or 140 pounds and you're fighting light heavyweights or even heavyweights or guys who weigh 180 or guys around your own weight, and that needs a lot of credit, especially in the like modern time where everybody's fighting each other, aside from the rehydration nonsense due to day before weighing rather than having the weighing on the day of the fight that would cut a lot of that nonsense out. You know, it should get more credit. So yeah, Barbados Walcott, automatic entry for me.
Great. So where does that put us? Back to scrapbook.
Yes, sir. I would like to nominate Joe Gans. Joe Gans, the old master. He was the first black lightweight champion. He was the first athlete in Baltimore, the first one who ever had a car. He had so many accomplishments as a fighter and as a champion that I have to put him in. So Joe Gans would be my second nominee? We're on our second one. Okay, yes. So my second nominee is Joe Gans.
Yeah, I have zero objection to Joe Gans. Top two or three lightweight in virtually everybody's book. I think he has to be in there for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I third that emotion. Joe Gans, one of the greatest lightweight fighters of all time, and also someone who he wasn't much bigger than the lightweight limit of 133 at the time, and he did fight some very serious welterweights and kept a really severe winning record. Literally giving up weight, not moving up a class and not weight cutting and then being almost as big as the guy, but actually giving up real sizable pounds. He didn't have a huge frame or anything like that compared to the welterweights. So yeah, Joe Gans, just a phenomenal fighter. But excuse me. So yeah, that's 100% he's a lock to be in the inaugural class. So BL, I think you're up now, sir.
Yes, and talking about, well, my next nominee, I'm going a bit off base. Okay, I want to nominate someone who I've long argued should be in the Hall of Fame for sure. To me, the fact he's not in there is a bit of an outrage. And we're talking about a fighter who fought fighters from lightweight all the way to heavyweight. Okay, and it is young Peter Jackson, the Baltimore Demon. I've been a proponent for a long time of him being in the Hall of Fame. You know, to me, any fighter, okay, who has stoppage wins over fighters like Sam Langford, Joe Choyinski, Mysterious Billy Smith, on and on and on. Alone, not Choyinski, I'm thinking of Barbados Walcott, Philadelphia Jack O'Brien. To me, young Peter Jackson, you know, from fighting for the coloured middleweight title, fighting at welterweight, fighting at lightweight, you know, fighting Langford at middleweight, you know, fighting Jack Johnson and going rounds with Jack Johnson as a smaller fighter, as well as beating a whole number of other fighters like Tommy West. Okay, Tommy West, a lot of people may not be as familiar with Tommy West, but he was someone who could give Barbados Walcott really good fights, you know, as well as the major names he fought like Langford, Jack O'Brien and fighters like that, Bobby Dobbs. He also fought and beat very, very good fighters like Dan Creed and Charlie McKeever. You know, he also fought and stopped Joe Butler, former coloured middleweight champion, you know, fought a fight series with Philadelphia Jack O'Brien and scored, like I said, stoppage wins. Okay, over Joe Walcott, Mysterious Billy Smith, Sam Langford, etc. He also stopped Joe Butler. He also stopped a number of other fighters. Fought Joe Jeanette, a heavyweight Hall of Famer. You know, to say Sim Tompkins once fought as a lightweight, and to say he's fought more than one heavyweight Hall of Famer is incredible enough alone. But I think with his ferocious knockout record as well, nearly, you know, 60 knockouts, the level of opposition he fought, yeah, I nominate young Peter Jackson.
Yeah, I
I know
wholeheartedly
it's a bit out of left field, but I want to throw a left field one in.
Not particularly. He had a really tough early era career, so I'm fine with hitting some of these key guys. He was a very important fighter. He was the key training partner for Joe Gans, so he rolled with royalty. He was also just a fantastic inside fighter. Like I've seen descriptions, especially his fights with Langford, just try to get inside, work the body. But he was really, really good at that. Lots and lots of power. Great fighter. Good choice, BL.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so I want to put.
I second that. I just want to say I second that. Great choice, BL. Great
Yeah,
choice.
thank you, Scott.
Sam Langford 6 times, and in fact, Sam Langford faced young Peter Jackson for the colored middleweight championship title. It was vacant, so he played a major role during that era, and he is so overlooked. I just can't understand it myself. So yes, I'm glad that he's been nominated for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you, Scott.
I think I'm gonna actually. It's my turn, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yes,
so I'm
sir.
going to mimic that pattern. I'm going to put someone else in the hall as a fighter who deserves to be in there. And again, it's just not right, in my opinion, that he isn't. That's the great Jack Blackburn, defensive master, key trainer as a pro, trained the great Joe Louis up to his heavyweight perfection, master of balance, defense, blocking, had a fantastic jab. His brother was a fighter too, a good fighter, respected regionally, but Blackburn was a real master boxer. And he trained other champions, but Joe Louis is like, just sort of like the quintessential like coach turns a guy into an all-time great. Louis already had power as an amateur. He was a good amateur, but Blackburn turned him into something special. And yeah, he definitely has to be in. He fought a ridiculous level of competition, including multiple fights against Sam Langford himself. So yeah, Jack Blackburn, he's in the hall now. I know you guys will agree.
I do personally, yes. He definitely needs to be in the Hall of Fame. Is he in there officially now? No,
He's in there as a
not.
trainer, but he's not in there as a fightor, which
Correct. I just wanted to make sure we have him in there now, and that's what matters.
yeah, because some guys they're just not as famous, or their memory isn't retained the same way, or just the way people look at records. Because he had a draw with Langford in 1903. This was just after Langford had beaten the great Joe Gans. Well, it was a prearranged draw, but Blackburn got the best of Langford in that fight, so it doesn't count as a win. But he got the best of the version of Langford that beat the great Joe Gans during Gans' title reign. So, like, certain things maybe dampen the enthusiasm, but not around here. We know what's up, and so he's in now. That's fantastic. Who's next?
I'll vote for him as well. Yeah, we need to make sure we get his votes in, guys, for audience. But yeah, I vote him in as well. And one of the things about Blackburn is that for the early era, he had one of the great jabs. He was also a great defensive fighter, cleverly using his elbows to block body shots and, turning his shoulders to block head shots. And then he was also an excellent counterpuncher. He could use his elbows to block body shots and then slam you a hard, straight left jabs and very sharp left hooks. So I don't think he gets enough credit. And I think his great defensive skill and his great boxing brain were one of the reasons why he had such longevity and had so many fights. And even well past his prime, fighting even fighters like Harry Greb, amongst others he fought, is incredible, really. So yeah, automatic choice for me, Blackburn.
Wonderful. So whose turn is it now? You put in young Peter Jackson, so I put in Blackburn. So Scrapbook, it's your turn, sir.
Yes, it's my turn. Yes, sir. The next fighter that I nominate, and I think we'll all agree, is Sugar Ray Robinson. Sugar Ray Robinson began his professional debut October 4th of 1940. Was on the undercard of Henry Armstrong and Fritzy Zivik. That right there was a great start to a career of a young man who was 85 with 60 knockouts, 40 in the first round. This man was something else. He really was. And you got to put a Ray Robinson in there, 5 times in the middleweight and 1 time as a welterweight. He did it all. He set the standard. And I think it's going to be hard for anyone to surpass that. So Ray Robinson has to be in the Hall of Fame in our YouTube category for sure.
100%.
Yeah, I'll just add a few things, if I may, to enhance what Scrap's already said. 2 things about Ray Robinson that he doesn't always get credit for. Now, everyone knows he could punch. He was a great combination puncher. He was very sharp. He could gain leverage, even moving backwards, like against Fulmer. What some people said was the perfect left hook. Now, I'm not sure about perfect left hook. It was a very, very well-timed punch, and it was bang on target. And Fulmer, who was extremely durable as a fighter, was just taken out. And that is one of the points I want to add to Scrap's nomination, is that even though Robinson is not regarded as a blunderbuss puncher like a Julian Jackson, a Gerald McClellan, he has one of the great knockout records, something that you normally hear people talk about: his speed, his combinations, his title success, but his knockout record, from Graziano to Bobo Olsen, Lamotta, who we stopped in St. Valentine's Day Massacre, Fritz Zivic. You go through his record, and his knockout record is absolutely incredible. The second point I want to mention is, as we all know on here, and probably most of the listeners will know of Ray Robinson's great title success, undefeated, undisputed welterweight champion, 5-time middleweight champion. He broke Ketchell's record, becoming a 3-time champion, then broke his own record to become a 4-time champion, then broke his own record. I mean, how many fighters set a record in a division and then break their own record twice? He then tried to break it a 3rd time in the rematch with Paul Pender, but sadly it didn't work out. Pender was a very tough, capable, top-level fighter, so it was not an easy solution for Robinson at that stage in his career. But yeah, but the thing about his title career is, when you actually list, if anyone out there listed his names on his title career who he fought, and then right next to them, if they're Hall of Famers or if they were champions or if they're top, the level of competition he fought, it's not only that he's got a title fight record, a big one like Sven Otka, but unlike Sven Otka, his title record is often against the now Hall of Famers of his time. Whether it's Gavilan, at welterweight, Lamotta, Bobo Olsen, Graziano, fighting Maxim, challenging for light heavyweight title. The fights were Fulmer, the 2 wars were Basilio. You go through his title fight record, and it is one of the best title fight records you can find in terms of level of opposition. And those 2 points I just wanted to add. But yeah, I think Sugar Ray Robinson's fairly automatic into random.
100%. And I'll just add one more thing. This is from your stat videos, BL, unless something's changed. So he had 29 fights against Hall of Famers, and he won 21 of them. Is it 21, right? 21 of them.
21 wins, 7 loss, 1 draw.
Yeah, 21 wins just over Hall of Famers, over great, immeasurably great fighters. Incredible. That's 3rd all time, if I'm not mistaken. So, you're only talking Langford and Greb that had more. So that really is, like, among other reasons, if you're talking about level of competition, there are few who've ever had that many fights. And among those that did, he's right up there in how many he managed to win. It's incredible.
Yeah, certainly, yeah.
On Ray Robinson, guys. Ray Robinson was not supposed to turn professional on October 4th of 1940. What happened was, they was not selling the tickets as they thought they could, because at that time, Fritz Zivic was close to the 500 mark. He ended his career with like 65 losses. So what happened? George Gainford got a phone call, and they wanted Ray Robinson to try for the Olympics. But there was an opportunity that they couldn't pass up. So they turned Ray Robinson professional. That's what brought in ticket sales. Because Ray Robinson, everybody found out that Ray's going to turn professional. Oh, wow. So they all got the tickets. At that point, that's when Ray knew his worth, and that's when he became one of the most toughest negotiators. But he was not supposed to turn professional then. He turned professional. They put him on as the first fight that evening, and it's almost sold out the Garden. Incredible. But that's where his worth was measured. And that's why I have him as a special fighter as well. But a lot of people don't realize that he was not supposed to fight that evening. They brought him in because they had to sell tickets, and they knew he can do the job, because he did it when he was in the Garden, when he was in the Golden Gloves. Just wanted to add that piece.
Wow, that's heavy. All right. So what is it? Back to me? Trying to think. No, I put in Blackburn. You did Sugar Ray. So whose turn is it now? I'm totally lost already, guys.
Is it your turn, buddy? Is it your turn?
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah. Right. Right, let me think. Right, I'm going to nominate, okay, the Philly Phantom, Tommy Loughran. A
Choice.
fighter who I think gets very, very underrated. He has one of the greatest resumes outside of those top names. You know, when you consider names, you know, like Langford and Greb and Robinson, Rosenblum, that top bunch, Loughran is in the next bunch. Okay, he's got an incredible resume. He fought a fight series against Harry Greb. You know, he came very close to holding Tunney to a draw. Well, depending on what source you read, I've read stories that some people thought Loughran beat Tunney. I've read other reports saying Tunney won more rounds. I've read other reports it were a draw. But after the initial rounds where Tunney was using body attacks and taking a lead, you know, Loughran made it a difficult fight for him. And, you know, he was one of the great boxers of his time, a great mover, a great counterpuncher. And it's not only that Loughran has one of great resumes, he was also, you know, a lineal undisputed light heavyweight champion. As well as the light heavyweight work he did, he also went on to fight an entire selection of fighters who also fought at heavyweight, including fighting Primo Carnera, who for me, you know, outweighed him by, I think, what is it, 100 pounds he was outweighed by Primo Carnera, which I'm not sure if it is still the biggest distance in a world title fight, or I don't know if they value have changed that. But, you know, Tommy Loughran, yeah, he fought everybody, you know, Johnny Wilson, Jack Delaney, he fought Striblin, he fought Greb, fight series with Jeff Smith, fought Gene Tunney, fought Mike Mateague, fought Primo Carnera. And even when you look at his heavyweight work, you know, he fought Johnny Risco, okay, who was a rated heavyweight. He also fought Ernie Schaff, an excellent contender, fought Max Baer, Tuffy Griffiths, Stanley Pareda, King Levinsky, Steve Hamas, you know, Primo Carnera I mentioned. So when you look at him, he's actually fought almost an equivalent of a modern career at heavyweight as well, you know, when you look at what he did. So yeah, Tommy Loughran, the Philly Phantom, to me is a fairly automatic choice. I don't know what you guys think.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, he moved up. Maxie Rosenblum tried the same thing. You know, he was the light heavyweight champ and he was hugely successful. And then he moved up and got into close to contention. You know, these guys, sometimes they just can't quite get to the heavyweight crown. But Loughran was absolutely incredible. His resume, going back, looking at the rankings and his year-to-year record and who was on his year-to-year record back in his prime is absolutely stunning. Even after his prime, he had a tough career. But yeah, in his prime, it was quite remarkable. Definitely, I think when I rated him, I think he made 15th or 16th in my all-time list, which is basically on resume. I mean, he's just a stunning resume. He's a serious dude. He's a lock to be in the hall in my book.
I mean, if I may add, he lost to Jack Sharkey, you know, fairly early, but even to beat, you know, fighters like King Levinsky, you know, Johnny Risco, he also defeated Jack Sharkey. He also defeated Max Baer. Okay, it was a heavyweight punching machine. He also won, lost, and drew. Okay, to Chilean heavyweight Arturo Godoy, who would go on to become the second fighter, I believe, to take Joe Louis the 15-round distance in a title fight, giving him an extremely tough fight in the first fight. Louis nailed him in the second. But yeah, to me, it's not only that he went to heavyweight, he also gained a lot of heavyweight scalps.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to nominate Tommy Loughran as well. Tommy Loughran, who's the Philly Phantom, he became the light heavyweight champion. But then he gave up the title to move up, and he faced Jack Sharkey when Gene Tunney had his last bout in 1928 against Tom Heaney. When Gene Tunney retired, it opened up a tournament, and they were fighting for the America's Heavyweight Championship title. And Tommy Loughran had moved up to face Jack Sharkey, which was a very brave move at that time. You know, you have to look at these little details when you measure a fighter. And the Philly Phantom was very brave. It was the biggest weight disparity between himself and Primo Carnera. I think to this day, that was the biggest weight disparity. He was a very brave person, but he was a stand-up fighter, moved from side to side, beautiful jab, fantastic fighter, well-selected, BL. That was a well-selected fighter. Great job.
Thank you, Scott.
Yeah, and so for my next inductee, I'm going to go with Joe Louis, a.k.a. Joe Louis. Joe Louis, I guess he was known as in England back in the day to many people. Joe Louis still holds some records today. And, you know, we're talking about a guy who was fighting in the 30s and 40s. And we've got records today, folks. Pretty remarkable. Knockout machine, balanced, great trainer, Jack Blackburn. A long prime, long destructive prime, lots of finishes. And compared to the other champions, he was, you know, when the day after he had won the title with beautiful right hand, he said in the papers he wanted to fight every month. Well, I don't know if he got one in every month, but he sure tried. He had a lot of fights. He rattled them off in the manner of Tommy Burns back in the day, who lost the title to Jack Johnson. But Tommy Burns' level of competition wasn't the same as Joe Louis. So this is a great fighter, a great knockout machine, great heavyweight in his prime. He was the absolute man. And he was considered possibly the best boxer overall, or one of the small handful of best boxers, in spite of being the heavyweight king. I mean, he was that good. He was just, but he also had a patience to him and a methodology. He wasn't just slam bam. You know, there was a pace to it. There was a maturity to it. And I think I came from the guidance of Blackburn, because he had power already when he got to Blackburn. But there we go. Joe Louis, he's in. He had to be in. He's in.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And one of the things you mentioned, Random, was, you know how great a fighter is when he breaks a mold. And you know, there's an old saying that we will have all heard: records are made to be broken. And in most cases, that's true. But in Joe Louis's case, that doesn't seem to be true, because he's set many records that have stood 80 years now and are still going strong and looking no danger of ever being beaten. You know, whether it's the most consecutive first round knockouts in title fights in the first round at 3, whether it's the longest reigning lineal heavyweight champion, when it's the most established heavyweight title defenses at 25, you know, whether it's most heavyweight title fight wins among the established title at 26. You know, you go through his entire record, and he's set those records. And one thing that I will always highlight on Joe Louis that I don't think always gets, he still gets talked about for this Bum of the Month Club. Now, just quickly, okay, I want to highlight something, okay, to the listeners, to people who say Bum of the Month Club. So if I say, okay, if I go through these names, if you gents will just give me one quick minute. So I'll say Tommy Farr, Nathan Mann, Max Schmeling, John Henry Lewis, Tony Galento, Bob Pastor, Arturo Godoy, Al McCoy, Red Berman, okay, Billy Conn, Lou Nova, Billy Conn again, Tammy Moriello, Jersey Joe Walcott twice. All of those fighters I mentioned in that list were all top 3 rated heavyweights when Joe Louis was champion, fighting them. So basically, he wasn't fighting a Bum of the Month Club. The fact is, he was just too good for his opposition. Just like Muhammad Ali beating many fighters he beat fairly easily, just like Mike Tyson blowing through many fighters fairly easily. Some fighters, like Roy Jones and others, are just too good for the fighters in their time. So there's a tendency to downplay their opposition. But as I've demonstrated there, I mean, from 1939 when he fought Tony Galento, okay, to 1942 when he fought Abe Simon, you know, we're talking about a 15-fight run. Every fighter was top 10 rated on the trot in a 15-fight run. And half of those were top 3 rated fighters. So, yeah, Joe Louis, underrated heavyweight record, underrated for the top-level heavyweights he was beating in his title reign. And, of course, being one of boxing's great punchers, being a great boxer, you know, very, very poised, patient, calm, a true assassin with that knockout power. Yeah, Joe Louis, great choice. Sorry for rambling. I just wanted to highlight that point, guys.
No, great point.
No, that was great. Perfect. I third that Joe Louis to be put on this Hall of Fame list. Joe Louis, a lot of people just don't quite understand. You gentlemen do. But a lot of people don't understand the significance of a Joe Louis. At that time of what the world was going through, what the communities were going through, and what the actual meaning of what a fighter was during that time. BL, great conversation on the Bum of the Month Club. But with Joe Louis, in 1937, when he became the second black heavyweight champion, he did it in Comiskey Park in Chicago when he took on Jimmy Braddock. And we talked about this, all three of us. When Joe Louis set up that combination to knock out Jimmy Braddock, when he knocked his hand out of the way with the hook and came over the top with the right, in order to do something like that, you have to have a great trainer behind you. You have to have great balance. You have to have great timing. So that fight alone would tell you the significance of the fighter. Joe Louis was such a robotic but technical fighter. Great movement, beautiful jab, specific timing was wonderful. And what he meant to the community during that time, you just can't describe it, because there were significant fights that Joe Louis participated in Yankee Stadium, which was really the mecca, really, at that time for Joe Louis's fights. It was so compelling worldwide with his fights with Smelling. It was just something that you can't subscribe to, because everybody in all nationalities were up looking for that fight because of what it meant right before the war, right before the times where segregation was just at its highest form. And he married all those issues into one place, Yankee Stadium. And everybody came as one to root for Joe Louis. It was mind-boggling how everyone wanted to dress up in their own household, listen to the radio, and listen to the fight of Joe Louis. Remarkable fighter. Not this, discounting his 25 title defenses and anything like that, but just the man himself and the time in which he came was remarkable. And Randall, one last thing. You said something in our last stream that I'll never forget. When Joe Louis knocked out Jimmy Braddock, out went the color line. And that was a beautiful line that you came up with. But that symbolizes Joe Louis. It does.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good that he's in the early batch. I mean, this inaugural class doesn't have to be all must-haves. We're winging it, folks. But definitely, I was going to make sure to if no one had by now, I was going to mention him. Gotta have him in there. He's a pivotal figure in boxing history. And that fight was, that's probably the most important fight politically in history. I mean, what was at stake? The propaganda value of a win or a loss there was monumental. Cannot be overstated. But he was the man for the job. Got it done. But also just on his resume alone, I mean, he's a hugely, it's like Ali, who I'm sure is going to come up shortly here. He's a pivotal figure culturally and historically, but then he's also has the resume that stands on its own.
Yes. And I'll also say that Joe Louis, he foiled Hitler's hope of gaining good propaganda, just like the great Jesse Owens did.
Very important.
So
that's right. Yeah, talk about pressure. That's a pressure fighter right there, as far as like cool under pressure. My goodness. So let's see. So who's next? So that was my pick. Who started the show off? Oh, you did, BL, right? No, you did, Scrap. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm up next. Scott Swap, Johnny Dundee. I have to put him in here.
Scrap, you're talking my language.
Johnny Dundee has to be in this Hall of Fame. There's absolutely no question about it. What he has done in his time is remarkable. He fought them all. I mean, the amount of championships that he was involved in incredible fighter was Johnny Dundee. One of my favorite fighters of all time. And I have to nominate Johnny Dundee.
Yeah, I cannot say fast enough. I cannot say fast enough. Yes, I accept wholeheartedly. Absolutely.
Yeah, agreed. No question about it.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys.
All right, BL, you're
Yeah,
up, sir.
Johnny Dundee. Just quickly to add, yeah, a great thinking fighter. You know, famed for fighting off the ropes, turning opponents. He'd turn them off the ropes, hit them with a quick shot, and they'd look round, getting hit, and he's smiling at them. You know, incredible fighter, fought well on past his prime. You know, fought many great fighters from featherweight to lightweight, and built one of the greatest resumes, and one of the largest of the established career fights, I'll say, in terms of his career size of all time. So yeah, coupled with featherweight and super featherweight honours, yeah, an absolute legend.
There he is in the graphic. He's 2 places to the left of Sam Langford's eye level, next to Tony Canzoneri and Tommy Gibbons.
Wow.
Yes.
Esteemed company.
Right underneath Benny Leonard. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So, so it's your turn still, BL.
Yes, it's my turn. Right, I have to name him because he hasn't come up yet. Okay, I nominate Harry Greb. I mean, come on, people. Everyone knew, to listeners, that I was going to come out with Harry Greb, you know, because aside from Langford, who I rate as the greatest fighter of all time, and for good reason, the second greatest fighter of all time I rate is Harry Greb. Now, just quickly to go through it, he had one of the greatest fighting hearts in any man I've ever learned about. Not only that, he was not technically refined, but he was very skilled in the ring in terms of the ring craft he modelled for himself. You know, with the jumping jack top, the jumping in, hooking you, turning you, clubbing you, jumping out, you're swinging and missing. You know, like Gene Tunney said, I aimed all my punches properly, but they wound up hitting empty air. I hooked, jabbed and crossed, but it was like fighting an octopus. Whatever I did, I was plastered with leather. You know, for the only man to defeat Gene Tunney and defeat him in the way he did, like one writer said, he treated him like a butcher treated a slab of meat. You know, he just battered Gene Tunney. And Gene Tunney, before fight, were very confident. He actually went to a Harry Greb fight not long before their fight for that, first fight. And Gene Tunney watching at ringside, because Gene Tunney would actually like to watch his opponents at ringside. A lot of people don't know this, but if he had an upcoming fight, he would often go watch the man fight to start gaining an idea of his skills and, you know, what kind of fighter he was, what his abilities were, what his weaknesses were. And I always remember reading an interview in a newspaper article with Tunney prior to the fight, and he said he was basically, I can't remember his exact wording, but he was saying that he didn't see anything over the top. He thought he'd be able to control him pretty easily, and he didn't seem that technically gifted. And sadly, he found out otherwise, because as Tunney himself said, you know, in the first 40 seconds when Greb slipped a shot, slammed him, broke his nose, Tunney realised that he was actually way cleverer than what he thought. And, you know, he was one of the fighters who built one of the greatest resumes. He had the 45-0 year. You know, he has, to me, the second greatest resume in boxing history. He was one of the most durable fighters, fighting punches from welterweight to heavyweight. You know, only stopped twice, you know, ultimately. And one of them was early in his career against Jochi when he was flatlined by a right hooking corner. But he was quite young in his career. But yeah, would fight heavyweight punches and make them look silly. You know, would fight Bill Brennan and box his ears off. And Bill Brennan was a tough, capable heavyweight contender, and he could do nothing with Harry Greb. You know, from being considered being past his prime, you know, to fighting Gibbons in 22 and putting on a display that some people said one of the greatest fighting displays they'd ever seen. This was already a Greb past his prime, and this was a Greb who still had not even had a title shot yet. The fight with Wilson had come up later, when Wilson finally realised he had no option but to fight Greb, after a number of states in the US would no longer sanction his fights. They didn't want him there. He was being called a yellow belly and a coward. And, you know, everybody knew that as soon as Greb got Wilson in ring, Greb were going to be champion. And actually, that is one fight where Greb said, I didn't want to do all wrong, because I've waited so long for this chance, I ain't going to blow it. So, he did. He completely, won the fight with ease. But, to go in with Hall of Famers and beat them with ease, that shows an incredible fighter. And to say he wasn't technically refined, his speed, his durability, like Dempsey, another fighter said, after sparring him, another fighter said, after fighting him, he's very hard to tag with clean punches. He's constantly coming at you, constantly moving, mentally draining you down. Yeah, I've said enough. Harry Greb.
Yeah, that's righteous. I mean, obviously,
I could ramble on for 3 hours, but I won't. Sorry, guys.
not at all. So let's see. Does that make it my turn?
No, I want to
Yes,
second
it
that.
does. Oh yeah.
I just want to second that, guys. Harry Greb, I don't know why he's so underrated. I just don't understand it. We all have him number 2 as the greatest fighter. Harry Greb has accomplished so much during his time, starting at welterweight, fighting as high as heavyweight. I mean, 1919, 1917, great years for Harry Greb. He has done it all. So he has to be in the Hall of Fame. If you want to, if you want to show what a Hall of Famer is, he's one of the guys that you cannot possibly have out. So Harry Greb, I nominate Harry Greb as well. Great choice, BL.
Yeah, thank you, Scrap.
Yeah, that one's absolutely not unanimous. I'm going to go with another unanimous pick. Let's get Hammer and Hank in there. Hammer and Hank Armstrong. This vicious little fighter, great pressure fighter, body puncher. Fantastic at just destabilizing an opponent, just breaking their boxing apart, just ruining spoiling their whole thing. What was it? 19 title defenses at welterweight, but he held 3. He was a champion at 3 weights at the same time. I mean, it was crazy. The percentage he had of all the gold in boxing was pretty obscene. That's all I'm going to say. I know you guys have stuff to add, but yeah, Hammer and Hank Armstrong, a true all-time great. In my book, he's 4th all-time, behind only Langford, Greb, and Robinson. Even with Robinson, I mean, he was great. I think number 4 is like about roughly where I have him, but phenomenal fighter. He's in now. You guys want to add to that?
Yeah, if I may. I'll just add that I used to know a gent, he's passed away now a number of years ago, but I used to know a gent when I was younger who actually saw Henry Armstrong fight in the UK back in the day, and I believe it was against Ernie Roderick. A tough fight in himself, but I always remember he told me that, he watched Henry Armstrong and live, and he said he was mesmerizing. He said he was just non-stop. There was just no stopping him. Relentless pressure. Would often look at his feet and his opponent's feet. Often would use, like, similar to a cross-arm defense. He would just keep coming forward and forward and forward, battering your body, battering your head. A bit like a version of a Rocky Marciano, a guy with a great engine, who would just batter you until you either managed to go the distance or you just couldn't take anymore, and he would break you down. But yeah, a real warrior and a fighter who fought across weights, because he actually won his first title at featherweight against Hall of Famer Peter Cerrone. He won his second title against Bass, the third title against the tough Hermika Hurricane Luambers. But he actually fought below featherweight as well in his career. And, when you consider that he won the 3 titles in such quick succession, when you consider that in 1.5-year run, he went 46-0 with 39 KOs, winning 3 undisputed titles, making 7 welterweight defenses of his then later welterweight division record of 19 title defenses. Just an incredible fighter all round. Also a great, knockout record, very durable. Just everything about his career screams Hall of Famer in every way for me.
Yeah, I have to agree. Henry Armstrong, definitely in the Hall of Fame. The accomplishments, second to none. He's done it all. He was a champion in all the weight divisions. In fact, 1938, Henry Armstrong had 3 titles: featherweight, welterweight, and then he went back down to the lightweight. When you had John Henry Lewis, who had the light heavyweight, and Joe Louis heavyweight, and it set a trend at that moment of the turning of the guard of opportunities for fighters. And Henry Armstrong had the bulk of that in 1938. So that was something really that you have to look at to see when a fighter or a champion has an opportunity, he takes advantage of it. And Henry Armstrong really did. I mean, 19 welterweight title defenses is mind-boggling. It really is. 1939, October alone, he had so many title defenses in that 1 month alone. So Henry Armstrong has done it all. He has to be in the Hall of Fame. So a great choice.
Yeah, and there he is in the graphic in the foreground on the left-hand side over toward the left in his crouch.
Great fighter.
Okay, so
Yeah,
who's
Armstrong
next?
as well. Another one. He's another one of those fighters with a great title fight record as well. You know, beating Cerrone, winning and losing to Ambers, who is very underrated. Lou Ambers, former sparring partner of Tony Canzoneri, and became a great lightweight fighter himself. You know, former lightweight champion and a really tough fighter, barring Lou Jenkins tagging in with his big shots for the most part. But yeah. A real great fighter, you know, lost twice to Zivic, lost his title to end his welterweight defense run, tried to re-win it, beat Zivic later, you know, but even after his prime, because a lot of people say when Robinson fought Armstrong, Armstrong had nothing left. He was past his prime, but I wouldn't say he didn't have anything left, because if you look in the 12 months prior to that, not only was he on a win run, but he was still beating a number of rated opponents and some fairly highly rated opponents. So he was past his best, but he wasn't completely shot. And I think a number of people underestimate Ray Robinson's victory there. Ray Robinson, you know, he admired Henry Armstrong so much. But yeah, Armstrong is the full package, you know, from the fight series with Baby Arismendi, the battering of, you know, Hall of Famer in the Boxing Hall of Fame, Barney Ross, to just the entire thing. A great career, great title record, great knockout record. Yeah, legendary fighter.
Yeah, so I think it's back to Scrapbook? Yes.
Yes. I nominate Tony Canzoneri. Tony Canzoneri.
Scrap, you're beating me to all mine.
Oh.
He's going to be my next one, too, if no one said him.
Oh, man. I didn't mean that, BL. Well,
yeah, go ahead, buddy.
BL,
Yeah, great pick.
Yeah, you know what, BL and Random, I think we're all in the same boat with a lot of these fighters. So, yeah, Tony Canzoneri was a magnificent fighter, a magnificent fighter. At the age of 17, I mean, he tried to take on Bud Taylor. You know, the thing with Tony Canzoneri, I mean, he's done so much. He was in there with fighters such as Kid Chocolate and Lou Ambers and Barney Ross. I mean, he's done it all, really, when you think about it. And there's no way you can deny it, Tony Canzoneri. Andre Rogers. I mean, all of these great fighters he was in there with. And that's what you want out of a champion. You want him as a contender as well to take on all the greats of his time. And Tony Canzoneri has absolutely done that. And that's the reason why I have to select him. I mean, Jackie Kid Bird and Billy Patrol, the Fargo Express, magnificent fighter. Magnificent fighter. BL and Random, what do you got on him?
Oh, yeah. You had to ask. Oh, sorry, Random. Do you want to go first, buddy?
Well, mine's only going to take 10 seconds. I'm just saying he's someone who fought, you know, it's great contemporaries in a rich era. That's all I wanted to add is like lots of guys, not everyone has the same opportunities because of the era they fight in and the weights that they pass through or don't pass through. Canzoneri got it in. That's all I wanted to say.
Oh, great point.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, it's actually a great point. Yeah, and I'd like to add that, you know, the thing about Canzoneri is not only if he gets another Hall of Famer added from his resume, he'll join that exclusive club of fighters who beat double-digit Hall of Famers. One other interesting point about Canzoneri, like Scrap alluded to when he challenged Bud Taylor, 17 years old, he would then go on to become, at the time, I believe, America's youngest world champion when he won featherweight honors when he was defeating fighters like Johnny Dundee and Benny Bass. Yes. And, you know, when you beat fighters like Dundee and Benny Bass under 20 years old, I mean, that itself is incredible. But to go on to, like Scrapbook alluded to, beating fighters like Kid Chocolate, holding wins over fighters like Lou Ambers, Jimmy McLarnin, You know, you go through his even other very underrated fighters like Leo Rodak. One thing about Tony Canzoneri, as well as the 5 titles across 3 weights, and his earlier challenge for bantamweight title, Scrap alluded to, you know, is the fact that it's the depth of his resume. You know, to put it in perspective, Canzoneri fought multiple top 10 rated fighters or top 5 rated fighters from bantamweight to welterweight. So if you think about that, virtually half of the divisions available at the time, he fought multiple fighters in multiple fights across multiple divisions, and he gained wins from bantam, feather, you know, super feather, lightweight, light welterweight. You know, he fought an absolute who's who, you know, from very good contenders, you know, like Cleto Locatelli, you know, Pete Nebo, Harry Dublinski. Now, when he fought Dublinski, he was top 3 rated at welterweight, you know, that year. So he lost and then beat Dublinski. You know, he won and then lost to Jimmy McLarnin. And, you know, the night when he fought Patrol for lightweight title, like I alluded to on one of my videos, Tony Canzoneri really was that good. That many of the writers at ringside, one of them especially, said that Tony Canzoneri's performance was so good against Patrol that night he could have gone in the ring with any of the great lightweights who there'd ever been, and he would hold his own. And I think that tells you what kind of fighter he was, not only when you match it, you know, to the even Luambers said, you know, Luambers had very, very tough fights with Canzoneri, even as a former sparring partner. And when Canzoneri was leaving his prime, Luambers still had incredibly tough fights with him. You know, he beat Luambers in 1935. Luambers were #1 lightweight contender in world that year. You know, when he's beating fighters like Frankie Click and Joe Ganuli, you know, they're both top 10 lightweights that same year. You go through year by year and he's just fighting a dirt top opposition. Just to give you an idea, okay, I want to give you an idea, okay, to the listeners. This is one fight run on the trot, okay? Billy Patrol, Billy Townsend, Pete Nebo, Wesley Ramey, Batley Shaw, okay, Barney Ross twice, Frankie Click, Kid Chocolate, Cecil Payne, Cleo Locatelli twice, Pete Nebo, Baby Arismendi, Frankie Click, and Harry Dublinski twice. Okay, that is 17 fights on the trot against top 10 rated opposition in just one fight run. Incredible. So, yeah, Tony Canzoneri, a true all-time great, like a number of fighters we've highlighted already. Yeah, very, very good pick, Scrapbook, because if you didn't get to him, buddy, I was certainly going to nominate him.
I'll say one more thing on him real quickly. A lot of people don't understand. Sammy Mendel was a fantastic fighter. But Sammy Mendel was knocked out by Al Singer in 1 round, July 17th of 30. But guess what happened? Tony Canzoneri, 6 months later, knocks out Al Singer in 1 round.
Yeah,
that was 6 months later.
Scrap, am I right in thinking that Al Singer set a record there as the only fighter to both win and lose a world title in first round?
Yes, in the first round. Isn't that amazing? And then a couple of weeks, another month or so later, he moves up to the junior welterweight division and he knocks out Jackie Kid Berg. I mean,
that right hand. Oh, what a shot.
Oh, my God. It's really amazing, this man's career. And then he takes on Kid Chocolate, and a fascinating career. We can talk about him all day. He was a fascinating fighter, Tony Canzoneri.
Yeah,
I agree.
So, BL, I think it's your turn. So you were denied Canzoneri. Who you taking instead? We got tons of hard lockings to go in.
So who do I want to go for? I think I'm going to go for, well, while we're on the subject, Jimmy McLarnin. Okay, I want to nominate Jimmy McLarnin, the Belfast
You got to be
Spider.
kidding me. That was my next one.
Yeah, a guy with
Canzoneri McLarnin.
Jimmy McLarnin goes in the Hall of Fame mainly because of all his nicknames. He had about 15 of them. But joking aside, he was one of boxing's great fighters. And one of the things about his career, it was very short for the time, 69 fights. And, having 43 fights against rated fighters, is it in 69 fights? Fighting a ridiculous level of competition. I mean, absolutely ridiculous. There are very few fighters, okay, who have fight runs. This is to listeners, okay, who have fight runs that can actually match Jimmy McLarnin. Because from his earlier career, when he was fighting Fidel LaBarba and contenders like Young Nationalista and fighting future Hall of Famers like Memphis Palmore, okay, he lost a trilogy to Bud Taylor, something he's not used to, losing trilogies to Bud Taylor. He destroyed Jack Fields in 2 rounds. Jackie Fields, one of the great fighters of that time, former welterweight champion. He destroyed Louis Kid Kaplan, okay, knocked out Sid Terris in 1 round. So people who don't know Sid Terris, he was one of the fastest, most aggressive punching lightweights of that era, and many fighters avoided him. You know, he fought trilogy with Sammy Mandel, fought trilogy with Billy Patrol, won both of those trilogies, lost a trilogy to Barney Ross, won and lost Tony Canzoneri, okay. The incredibleness of his career, you know, from losing to Lou Willard, one of few Hall of Famers who actually beat him, destroying Young Corbett III in 1 round. Just an incredible career. And for that incredible run from his 43rd fight, his 41st fight, to his 69th fight, where every single fighter was rated, okay, and over half of them were Hall of Famers across that run. Incredible. I think it's actually 29 fights, is it, on the trot against rated opponents? Most of them Hall of Famers. And in that last 29 fight run, to give you an idea, that's when he fought Ambers and beat him, fought Canzoneri twice, fought Ross 3 times, fought Mandel in the trilogy, you know, fought Patrol in the trilogy, beat young Jack Thompson, former welterweight champion. You know, just incredible career. And another thing that McLarnin was good at, he would often lose fights and then come back to beat them. You know, like he lost the first fight to Sammy Mandel, came back and beat him twice. You know, he lost to Ray Miller and came back and beat him. So he would often lose to fighters like Canzoneri, who he lost and then came back and beat him. He lost to Barney Ross in first fight, then came back and beat him. He did then lose a 3rd fight. But yeah, just an incredible fighter. Jimmy McLarnin, I nominate.
Absolutely.
Well, I second that.
Go ahead,
Jimmy McLarnin. No, I'm sorry, Random. I was going to say Jimmy McLarnin ended the career. Well, not really ended the career of Benny Leonard, but it was a sad night when he stopped her in 6 rounds. Benny Leonard made a comeback, 32. He had 19 fights that he won as a comeback, and then he met a young man called the Babyface Assassin, one of a few names, Jimmy McLarnin, and that was a wrong night for him. But Jimmy McLarnin also defeated Pancho Villa. Pancho Villa, as a matter of fact, that was the evening that he swallowed some blood and it hardened in his throat. He had an infection and he would die. But Jimmy McLarnin was a hell of a fighter. He bounced back and forth. I had the pleasure of meeting him. I had the pleasure of meeting another person that BL, you mentioned Sid Terris.
Yes.
Sid Terris put Ruby Goldstein. I met Ruby Goldstein. Goldstein said that was the hardest puncher that he ever faced that evening at the Polo Grounds when he was knocked out in 1 round by Sid Terris. Sid Terris was a fascinating puncher, and Ruby Goldstein was knocked out in 1 round at the Polo Grounds. But yeah, great names, fascinating names.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so McLarnin is on this graphic. He's 2nd from the left on the top row.
Yeah, second team,
his little baby face. So let's see. So that makes it my turn. Well, I was going to do Canzoneri and then Scrap did him. And then I was like, well, I'll do McLarnin. And then BL, you picked him. So I think I'm going to hijack one from you, BL. I'm going to put Slapsy Maxi in there because I don't think anyone's put him in yet.
No, he was my next one.
Yeah, revenge is sweet. Slapsy Maxi Rosenblum, the most fights that I'm aware of, BL, from what I gather, the most fights against rated opponents and the most wins against rated opponents. And he fought an incredibly rich era, and he was ranked at middleweight, and he was ranked at light heavy, and he was ranked at heavy. I think he was ranked at middleweight, like earlier in the 20s before he hit his prime, but he did get ranked. He fought a crazy year-to-year record, and his level of competition was obscene. And if you look at the guys in the ratings and how often he was meeting guys who were factors at the end of the year, how many of those guys he'd either already fought or was about to fight, it's just silly. And, you know, he got dementia at the end. You know, he paid the price for all the blows in the head, but he was an incredibly clever fighter. He was everything but a power puncher, but he was a genius level fighter. And I guess I saw a clip. Customato said that Maxey might have been the cleverest fighter he ever saw. So that's quite an endorsement for more casual fans who would know Cuss, but maybe not know Maxey. But yeah, fantastic fighter. BL, I know you want to go off on this guy, so go ahead. I'm done.
Oh yeah, for me a great choice, and I'm not even going to really go too deep into him. I'll add to what Random pointed out, the great point he made out. He has fought more fights against top 10 opponents than any fighter in my database. It's also worth pointing out he's fought more fights against top 3 rated fighters than any fighter in my database, with a massive total of 75. I mean, these figures, when you say them, they sound very cartoonish, but this is just what he did. And, like Random quite rightly pointed out, he started out at middleweight, when he was fighting tough contenders like Tiger Jack Payne and Ye LeCun. He quickly graduated up through there fighting. He fought multiple middleweight contenders, Phil Kaplan, fought Hall of Famer Dave Shade, fought Tiger Flowers, but that were only tip of iceberg. From there he went to light heavyweight where he's fighting Slattery's and Latzos and Jock Malone's and Jack McVeigh's. And he kind of fought everybody who you could hope a fighter would fight, Lou Stoza, Leo Lomsky, really, really tough contenders who were capable of beating Hall of Famers on the day. Other really tough contenders, like Cuban Bobby Brown and Fred Lenhart and fighters like that. I think that Rosenblum, going to heavyweight as well is another massive addition. He beat Braddock, who went on to become a heavyweight champion. But then even to fight at heavyweight, like he did after all that incredible work he'd done at middleweight and light heavyweight, to fight heavyweight contenders like Lee Ramage, who wasn't a great heavyweight, but he was a tough contender, heavyweight rated opponents, like Ford Smith, Hank Hankinson, he's just fought an incredible career, capped off with those fights at heavyweight. I mean, he holds a win over a guy who that year was the #1 contender at heavyweight, Lou Nova, a very, very good heavyweight contender. He also won and lost to another very good heavyweight contender, Jimmy Adamick. Scrap will know these names. I don't know if Random will be as familiar with them, but basically, it shows the depth of his resume because he's not only having all the fights against rated opponents, he's doing it across multiple weights. He became a legitimate light heavyweight champion, and held that title for a time. And after being whipped by Harry Greb, he actually admitted that Greb rubbed off on him. And he realized fighting when he was getting battered left and right by Harry Greb and could do very little except try and cover up and defend himself. He realized maybe Greb's onto something. So he became known as Slapsy Maxie because he would attack, throw lots of punches in bunches, and try and basically overpower the opponent with work rate, similar to what Harry Greb did. Rosenblum said that Greb influenced his career, a bit like other fighters, like Ken Overlin would try and do later. Also admitted that same success. No one could do it quite like Greb, though, because he had other traits like incredible chin, speed, everything else to couple with that work rate. But yeah, Rosenblum, I mean, even beating over 50 individual rated fighters from middleweight to heavyweight is incredible. He also beat 8 Hall of Fame fighters. When you couple that with that incredible career of near 300 fights, he is a true legend of the sport.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree. Maxie Rosenblum goes in. I agree, 100%. He was something else. He really, really was. He turned out to be a great actor as well. He was a man of many traits, but Maxie Rosenblum he was something else. His power was the issue, but he could box your ears off. Him and Tommy Lockman, those two fighters, very good boxers for light heavyweights.
Yeah, so that brings us back to you, Scrap. I think my battery's actually running low on my phone, gentlemen. I'm afraid. I was at work all day. I didn't really have time to do much, including charge it. But I think I have time to do one more each. Maybe we call that for our first show. What do you think?
Yeah, cool. Yeah, it's been a productive first show. We've got a number in.
Yeah, and I'll do a graphic, folks, for the next show. I'll just have the graphic up of what we're calling the inaugural class. But I mean, we're still not through the guys that just must be in. There's the first few shows is going to be guys that we're all going to agree on. I'm quite sure. But Scrap, how about your next one? Who haven't we hit yet?
Freddie Miller. I got to put Freddie Miller in there. I think Freddie Miller had his fight with Petey Cerrone. Petey Cerrone took the title from Miller. They went back and forth. As a matter of fact, in the amateurs, they had met up several times in the amateurs, but Freddie Miller was, I think he's very underrated. BL knows him very well, his career. I got to put Freddie Miller in there, a dynamic fighter he was. Like I said, he lost his featherweight championship title to Petey Cerrone, and then Armstrong, of course, picked up the title from Petey Cerrone. But yeah, magnificent fighter was Freddie Miller.
Yeah, good call. I second that.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. Freddie Miller defines the word world champion, because that guy fought in more than a dozen countries, and he fought in countries across Africa, Europe, everywhere. And these were at a time, to listeners, that there weren't commercial airlines. You know, if Freddie Miller wanted to get another country, he had to book as passenger on a boat. Okay, he had to travel. You know, so it's not like now where a fighter can leave London, Heathrow Airport, you know, get in Saudi Arabia 13 hours later, 12 hours later, 10 hours later, however long it takes, never flown there. But you get my point. When he came to Europe for a fight, as Langford and other greats did before him, he couldn't get a 16-hour flight and land in Paris. He had to, you know, take provisions, get his team onto boats, and they had to sail across the Atlantic Ocean. Then they had to get on steam trains from the close to the ports and travel to where they're going. You know, so to be a world champion in that time, traveling around, fighting in as many countries as he did, while building one of the greatest featherweight resumes of all time, and also fighting for that NBA title on a consistent basis, having well over a dozen featherweight title fights with the names he did. Yeah, Freddie Miller, to me, still goes underrated by many. Even on many Hall of Fame lists, you'd never see his name come up. You know, people throw all the usual suspects in. And then a lot of time what I find with Freddie Miller is, even now, some people say to me, oh, well, he wasn't really that good in what he didn't really do much. Which, on a future one, when we get onto Leo Hook, I'm going to go off. Okay, but, so get ready for that one, guys. But yeah, I think he's a great choice. He's very underrated. And I think any serious Hall of Fame, like ours will be, Freddie Miller is one of those fighters who has to be in.
Absolutely. So, BL, that brings us to for this show, your final inductee for the first batch.
Ooh, my final inductee. Who am I going to pick? Let me have a think about it. Who do I want to put in for my last one? I will go the boxing marvel, Jack Britton. What did you say, Scrap? Were you gonna?
I was going to say Ed Gunborn Smith.
Damn, you've spoiled it for the next one. Yeah, anybody? Yeah, not to you guys, but anyone out there wants to tackle me on Ed Smith, bring it. I'm ready. But anyway, yeah, Gervonta Davis had 20 odd fights against Hall of Famers, like Ed Smith. But anyway, who do I put in? Okay. Let me decide. I'll put Muhammad Ali.
Oh yeah, that's a good call.
Last one, I'll just go for this show. I'll go Muhammad Ali. I know on future episodes we're going to have some we may not all agree on, and that's great. But to me, Muhammad Ali, and like many fighters on this first episode, you know, there are a number of fighters who are going to be fairly guaranteed. Muhammad Ali is one, okay, because he was a trend changer. Not only did he set the record of being the first 3-time lineal heavyweight champion, he changed how boxing operated. During his time, purses, the event side of boxing, grew ridiculously. He not only set one of the greatest heavyweight resumes of all time, he changed the nature of the game itself, as well as setting historical records. As well as that, he was one of the great sportsmen, period, of all time. You're talking about a guy who had charisma, incredible heart, you know, an incredible chin, you know, desire, you know, even coming out in that last round against Shavers, when he's ahead on points and trading with Ernie Shavers in the last round, taking some hellacious punches off Shavers, at times looking like he was going to sag into ropes, but staying on his feet. You know, getting flatlined by Frazier's left hook in 15th round at Fighter's Century, at time regarded as one of the greatest heavyweight fights of all time. You know, when you look at his career as a whole, he fought all the great punchers, the feared punchers, you know, from Liston, okay, he fought Foreman. He caused upsets on two fighters he was given virtually no chance of beating, and he beat both of them. When you add that to his entire career, he's not only one of the greatest boxers of all time, he's one of the greatest sportsmen of all time. You know, and I don't rate this on, you know, for the Hall of Fame in terms of boxing. I don't rate fighters on this. But how many other boxers have twice been to negotiate for hostage releases? How many of the boxers have shot up a building to talk a jumper out of jumping off the building? And then not only talking him out of jumping off, but in the preceding weeks, going to visit that guy a few times to make sure he's all right. You know, whether it's coming to England and walking down your average English street in the late 60s, early 70s, to see a guy who started a campaign to keep Ali as the established ring champion during his ban from boxing. Ali would walk down this regular person's street in England to have a drink of tea with the man who set the campaign up against ring to keep him as ring champion when he'd been stripped. We're talking about one of the greatest men of all time, period. Fighting for racial equality. Going around the colleges speaking about racial inequality. Going with his Olympic gold medal to a restaurant that he was turned away from. You know, just I can't say enough. I've said enough. I'll let you guys jump in. But yeah, just a pure legend in boxing. And anyone who says otherwise is an idiot. I've had people in my time on YouTube who say that Alexander Povetkin would beat Muhammad Ali. I'm like, you are talking off your rocker. But anyway, yeah, I'll let you guys jump in.
Yeah, well, I'll keep my part short. Yeah, he was a great man and a great voice, as well as a phenomenal genius in the ring and a fiery competitive spirit. That's all I'm going to say. And his resume stands alone. Even if you take away all the other reasons that we would consider him great, just his resume is absolutely absurd for how many fights he had. I'll send it over to you, Scrap.
Yes. Yes.
Muhammad Ali was the man who changed the game when it came to being able to speak your mind as a fighter, as a human being, regardless of race. He was the guy who actually spoke up. And just that alone gave opportunities for fighters to really look at where they were going in this game and in life in general. He came at a time when the voices of the not heard can then be heard. And I said before that Muhammad Ali couldn't really make it in Joe Ulis's time. And what I meant by that was his persona, the person he was, how he would have spoken out, the injustices. Wouldn't have worked for him at that time in the 1930s and the 1940s. He came around at the perfect time. And he was able to set the trend for fighters of today. And for that reason alone, you got to take a look at a man like that. As far as his career is concerned, phenomenal. I mean, he was the first 3-time heavyweight champion. And the way he was able to accomplish that, like BL said, through toughness. Through toughness. No one thought he would beat Foreman at the Rumble in the Jungle. The way he would come back and defeat Joe Frazier in the Thriller in Manila. I mean, this is a fantastic example of what a fighter is. So Muhammad Ali has to be in his Hall of Fame. No question about it.
Can I just say quickly, I know Random's phone power's low, but I'll just say my weight today is 215 pounds. That's fighting weight. This man is slower. This man is flat-footed. This man don't stand a chance. This man's supposed to annihilate me. He caps that incredible speech off saying, I think it'd be fitting to go out of boxing just like I came in, beating the big, bad, ugly monster that nobody could beat. And everybody thought he was talking crazy, and then he shocked the entire world. The world paused the day following that fight. That sums it up. Incredible heart, incredible man.
That's right.
Yes.
At times he was so good that people were underrated against him, but other times he proved the consensus opinion wrong. So he did overcome the odds while simultaneously being so great that other people couldn't get credit because they looked so bad against him. He was just that good. He was just such an important guy. I think for my last, I'm going to stay with the heavyweights. I'm going to put the great Jack Johnson in there. The first actual, in the gloved era, the first undisputed heavyweight champion, properly undisputed. He was the colored heavyweight champion. He won it from the very capable Denver Ed Martin, very underrated fighter, in 1903. And then at the end of 1908, he beat the Canadian Tommy Burns to unify the colored and the formerly white heavyweight titles. He was the absolute man. It didn't last very long because he didn't have the pivotal fight with Sam Langford in May of 1909, but he was truly undisputed. And I'm pretty sure after him, you got to go to Joe Louis in the 30s for the next really actually undisputed heavyweight champion, who's basically where there's no colored belt and white belt, and they just one belt. So, I mean, Joe Louis, pivotal figure. Jack Johnson, also pivotal figure. Controversial, but in sporting terms, he had a very tough resume, and he fought some serious dudes, not all of whom get their full credit. And so it's more than just his title accomplishments, but it is worth noting that, you know, from 1903 to 1915, he held one or both of the titles. Mostly one or the other, but for a short time there, they overlapped. So just an incredible talent and a fantastic combination of technique, savvy, and size. So he was a big guy, but he wasn't too big. He could really move. He had good stamina. He knew how to wear an opponent down. He was clever. He learned a lot. He learned from his mistakes. And yeah, just a great fighter and a media personality. But even ignoring that, just based on resume and sporting accomplishment, he's one of the greats, and so I had to put him in. And I'll let you guys add on to that before we close the show out. You know, you can add on, I'm sure.
I'll jump first if that's okay, Scrap. I'd just like to say, despite someone once trying to argue with me that Gennady Golovkin would knock out Jack Johnson, I tried to explain that Jack Johnson would beat the dog out of Gennady Golovkin in a boxing ring. You know, he quite rightly, like Random said, yeah, you can't believe this, can you? Someone said, oh, well, this Johnson wanted a big heavyweight, so Golovkin could fight him, he'd knock him out. Yeah, right, okay. But Johnson, actually, from his 20-plus title fights for coloured and world heavyweight titles, he only ever lost one, and that was to Jess Willard. He was undefeated coloured heavyweight champion, okay, defeating everybody put in front of him. He then he battered Tommy Burns, humiliated him, was just treating him like a rubber sparring partner in that ring, and then went on to dominate. Now, yeah, we all know he didn't fight Langford and them, but looking at his career as a whole, he was one of the most influential figures in early boxing, okay? He also changed the game because he set the precedent that, you know, a black fighter could become world heavyweight champion. You know, there'd already been Dixon and Gans, you know, etc. But, you know, the heavyweight division was the Premier League in those days. A lot of people don't realize how much bigger the heavyweight division was than the featherweight or bantamweight division. You know, the heavyweight division was seen as a symbol of the elite in boxing. By many people, especially the paying public, not necessarily in boxing circles, because they were aware of many fighters across the divisions. But, you know, a heavyweight title fight, you know, was a massive event. And, you know, Jack Johnson ruled supreme, both as coloured heavyweight champion, then as world heavyweight champion. You know, he was heavyweight champion from 1908 to 1915. You know, that run was not really bettered until Joe Louis bettered that. You know, Dempsey had a kind of similar length reign. But yeah, one of great early boxers for sure. And despite what people say, yeah, Gennady Golovkin would definitely not knock him out.
No, that would be a horrible fight for Triple G. Probably an embarrassing fight. Not that he's not a great fighter, but you know, you put Jack Johnson in there with someone that size, it's going to be a bad night. Unless it's like the young Peter Jackson fight, where young Peter Jackson actually won the challenge by lasting the distance. because a lot of people weren't going to bet on whether he was going to win. They're betting on whether he could actually stay I think it was 12 rounds. He did stay the 12 rounds. So maybe Gennady could survive a challenge match, but yeah, I don't see it happening personally.
No.
I can't believe he said that. Gennady Golovkin will be knocked out within 4 rounds if he got in there with Jack Johnson, even in Jack Johnson's time. But one of the reasons why Jack Johnson was despised, gentlemen, was because they wanted to get rid of Joe Gans. They were trying to get rid of Joe Gans with the battling Nelson and the Jimmy Brits. His reign ended in 1908. When did Jack Johnson's heavyweight championship reign? In 1908. So when they thought they got rid of one black fighter in Joe Gans, here comes another black fighter and Jack Johnson. What made it worse, he became the heavyweight champion of the world. And John O'Sullivan and Corbett and all of them tried to prevent that from happening. So this was something that a fighter of the magnitude of a Jack Johnson would have to deal with during that time, especially in 1910, after he defeated in 15 rounds, taking him basically the distance before he got rid of him, Jim Jeffries. And then the next day they would have Red Summer. It was just tension. It was like tension in the air of lynching when he fought. So that time that Jack Johnson came, just to survive that psychologically, shows me a lot about who Jack Johnson was. So he has to be in the Hall of Fame, no question about it. Great job, gentlemen.
Oh, this has been so much fun. Thanks so much, guys. And we can do one next week or the week after, whatever works best for you guys. We'll talk about it in the back, but I'll do up a graphic of all the people we got to in this show. I mean, we're still in the must-be-in zone of the thing. We're comfortably inside the deadlocks to get into our Hall of Fame. So this has been great. Can't wait. There are guys we didn't get to.
Next show, guys, get ready because I'm coming with Ed Smith, and it's going to be hard.
Well, I don't think I would disagree. I mean, I guess some of this comes down. To how many people we envision eventually having. But I think, I think within our standard, Ed Smith had a tough career. That's a respectable career. I don't think. I don't think the arguments against aren't that strong. I wouldn't vote against Gunboat, thinking about how large eventually our hall is going to get if we keep doing these shows.
Yeah, I necessarily won't put him in. I respect him, but I don't see him as a Hall of Famer. But I live in a hope one day that the IBHOF.
If you came in strong, BL with an argument for him, I don't know if I could vote again. I mean, he gave Sam Langford his only loss of 1913, a busy winning. I'm pretty sure, right? Was it 13? Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm thinking of a different fighter, but he did beat prime Sam Langford, the prime heavyweight killer Sam Langford.
Yes, he did. And if he wouldn't have got DQ'd against Carpentier, he was going to get a fight with Jack Johnson. But he was a 6'2" economical puncher, threw some good straight punches, controlled range quite well. He was a kind of a range heavyweight, economical puncher, quite accurate with his shots. But yeah, I won't nominate him. But I'm joking. But yeah,
all right. We'll see when we get to the fifth show. We might move a little faster because I mean these guys we're all talking about. There's a lot to say about them. We could do a show on any one of those guys we've talked about tonight. But I think we'll see how it all goes because I got a lot of people in mind. It just depends how deep we go into the ranks.
Yeah,
we haven't even touched the modern legends. I mean, the history of the sport is so rich. I mean, I don't even know how many we did. Maybe less than 20. So this is just the beginning. But folks, thanks so much for tuning in. This is fun. Feel free to put in your comments your picks for your top fighters of all time or your guaranteed lock. So we sprinkled in a couple others because if we were pick your first 10 to go in, I wouldn't have Blackburn in there, but he is someone who was going to be in there guaranteed. And I just had to throw him in when I did. We're just winging it because we have no criteria. We're all grown men. We're just here talking basically boxing. So this has been tons of fun. Look on my channel for the next episode coming up, and I'll have the graphic of everyone we put in this time. And thank you both.
Thank you, gents, to both of you. Fantastic stuff.
Great show,
Yeah.
gentlemen. Speak to you guys later.
Yeah, great
Thank
hearing
you.
your voices. We'll talk soon, guys. All right, thanks everybody.
Yeah, big shout out to you.